Marriage counselors of Reddit. Has a couple ever come in where you knew you couldn't help them? My cousin is a marriage counselor, and she said that most couples visiting her have one person who is trying to rebuild the relationship, and the other one has already mentally packed up and left. The sessions usually turn into grief counseling for the one who hasn't figured out it's over already. As someone about to enter into marriage counseling, I am horrified by this and very sad. More often than you'd think, people come into marriage counseling after they've already decided their marriage is over. Often, people feel pressured to try to fix it by doing professional couples work, when in reality they're just doing it so they can look back after the divorce and be able to say they've done everything they could. If I get that sense, I often ask them if I'm there to help them repair their marriage, or if my job will be to facilitate a healthy divorce process or co-parenting plan. Many couples seem relieved when this comes up, as pretending to do the work of couples therapy is, in that case, just delaying the inevitable. Ha, you really summed up my personal experience. I had moved out a few months before me and my ex went to our first appointment, and I'd known long before that I wasn't coming back. I felt I owed it to him to at least go to a few sessions, although they were his idea, but it still took him 4 months to book. I feel better having this articulated. Thank you. This is what I've learned. You cannot have higher expectations for someone than what they have for themselves, and vice versa. I've had clients that frustrated the heck out of me because I set the bar too high, so I thought we weren't getting anywhere. Conversely, I remember one couple I saw where I thought that there was no hope, but somehow they made it work. The bottom line is that going in with preconceived notions is rarely helpful. People are always surprising. I find it uplifting that a couple you had no hope for actually came out okay. I'm working towards becoming a therapist, and what you said about not having higher expectations than what they have for themselves is some great advice I've yet to hear before. Used to work for a judge. First case on rotation through divorce court was a couple, both of whom were marriage counselors. For real. Being a counselor can really mess things up for your relationships. I was engaged when I was in my MFT program, and my now wife and I had some of our most difficult times during this period because I started overanalyzing everything. When all you do is talk about relationships all day long, sometimes it's hard to just be in a relationship. My ex and I went to see a marriage counselor. After seeing us a couple times, he had me in for a private session and said, "Honey, some people are better off not married. You're not yet. X has a personality disorder and there's nothing you can do. He doesn't want to change. Get out. Get out now." I was stunned. "But you're a marriage counselor. You're supposed to help us fix our marriage." Well, I was stubborn and kept trying to make it work for a bit longer, but eventually I took the professional advice. Shoulder left way sooner than I did. But you're a marriage counselor. You're supposed to help us fix our marriage. I think this is a common misconception. If two people just aren't happy being married, the counselor should help them be happy, even if it means being separated, divorced. Some people seem to have the attitude that if the couple breaks up, the marriage counselor has failed. The counselor's job is to help the couple live their best lives. If that means helping the couple decide to move on, then perhaps that is for the better. When I was shopping around for marriage counselors, most of them mentioned that their purpose was to help improve the marriage or to assist couples in separating if that was what was best. They were very upfront that saving the marriage wasn't the only option and may not be the best option. As my sister said of a friend of hers, sometimes the marriage counselor doesn't help you save your marriage. Sometimes the marriage counselor helps you end the relationship on the best possible terms, which is sometimes very important. This is Merca. Man and woman should get a marriage. My dad agreed to go to marriage counseling with my mum, just to tell her he had a mistress and wanted to leave her. Then he got up and left. Must have been pretty awkward for the marriage counselor. That's actually really common experience for marriage counselor apparently. One of my professors talked about how one half of the couple wants to break up and somehow feels better about doing with a counselor so the other person has some support. My so and I are in counseling right now and it's been great. The only issue we had was in the beginning my so thought we would do all of the work in session, but soon realized that no, we do the work and come in for checkups. It's been 2 months and so many things have changed. I would love to hear more about it if you're willing to share. I'm not married or anything, just curious as to what they asked you to do, what changed in your relationship, etc. Actual marriage counselor here. In my experience, the reason that most couples come in is because one spouse wants to salvage the relationship more than the other spouse. So, generally I will work with the couple to try and rebuild the connection, usually by improving communication skills. That being said, if I notice that a spouse is pulling away and marriage counseling will not work, I will meet with the spouse that is clinging to the marriage and tell them to prepare themselves for a divorce or separation. I usually have that spouse work on making themselves happy and building a life where their happiness is not dependent on someone else. After all is said and done, I refer my clients, as needed, to individual counseling. I knew a woman in an abusive marriage who talked her husband into going to counseling by saying she'd file charges for him hitting her if he didn't. He left her a few weeks later and she pretty much went off the deep end after that. If ever there was a couple beyond saving, it was them. Not a counselor, sorry, but the one my parents went to see told them, after 8 weeks, that they should get divorced. In his words, "There is no hope for you two." My parents are very stubborn, so they basically went, "Frick this, no one will tell us how to live our lives." That was 6 years ago and they are celebrating their 27th in a week. I'm studying to be a marriage and family therapist. From the couples I've dealt with, in order for the therapy to be anything productive, both people in the relationship have to have wanted to go to therapy to work on their relationship. Sadly, a lot of way too long to ask for help, and when they do actually seek it out, it's only because they both know it's over and it's a last-ditch effort to keep the relationship going for as long as possible. So true, they wait till after the car accident to buckle up. My ex and I went to counseling. After years of me requesting it, went to a few sessions together. Then the counselor suggested we each see one independently. I went in for my second solo session and the counselor said that all 3 counselors compared notes and agreed it was the best idea for us to split up. They wished me well and told me that they would stand behind me in a court of law if required. Not a marriage counselor, but a divorced man. 3 of the 6 marriage counselors we saw told us it would better if we ended the marriage. We fought viciously, and neither of would give in. We finally divorced after 26 years when I decided I didn't give crap who won the lifelong battle. My marriage counselor told me that continuing to try to work on marriage was pointless as she clearly had no interest in fixing issues. So yes, they do. My grandma and grandpa were in group marriage counseling where the counselor told everyone in the group their marriages were over. My grandparents got divorced and my grandma ended up marrying the husband from one of the other couples. My grandpa married the counselor. More than 30 years later, they are still in those marriages and way happier than they ever were together. This sounds like a bad Lifetime movie, but it's real life, so it's even better than bad TV. A friend of many, a father left his wife for their marriage counselor. I'm pretty sure the counselor knew she couldn't save that marriage. Bonus: he built a new, bigger house down the street from the one he left the mother with. The new one had a pond. I am pretty sure that's a pretty severe ethics violation, having a relationship with a client. Not married, but together 6 years. Lived together. Pregnancy and miscarriage early on. We started counseling in the last months. At the end of our sessions I'd always feel like we had made progress. She was always depressed and angry afterwards. Although would say that counseling was helping, I thought it was. Looking back, she had pretty much given up. But our issues were always like that. Generally things that I had to work on. My problems. And I bought into that notion. It's been the toughest year of my life since it fell apart. Once you take responsibility for where you find yourself and where you were, that's when it gets hard. I started my own therapy a couple months before her and I went to a different couples counselor. I went because I was having a really hard time making decisions and felt like I was going kind of crazy. So glad I had my therapist when it all unraveled. It has since shed light on tons of things. I'm a big advocate for therapy. For everyone. I'm a big advocate for therapy. For everyone. I went for family therapy for a year with my father. We also had individual sessions, but early on the psychologist told me there was nothing he could do for me. because I was so abnormally self-aware that I could basically sit down and analyze myself without his help, and had done so in front of him. This was flattering, but frustrating. When I deliver couples counseling, I always tell the couple from the onset that my job is to help the relationship, but helping the relationship could mean helping the couple end it. It's a lot easier for all involved, me included, to accept the relationship ending as a realistic outcome. They don't get frustrated with each other when things don't get better, and I don't get frustrated if I don't fix the relationship. Our counselor says there is always hope if both people are willing to change. When we started after about 6 sessions, he sat us both down and said, basically, you are acting as if you are already divorced. You just haven't divided the money and moved out yet. So do you want to do that? Or do you want to fix things? That was humbling. We both decided we wanted to fix it. Been a while, but we are getting there. And before you think moneymaker, this guy is literally half price over anyone else, and for us, more effective than the higher priced ones. He only works part-time and can choose his clients. We have spent a lot, but way cheaper than divorce too. And hey, deep down, we still love each other. We just lost sight of that. We joked ever had a worse couple, and he said he has had some who he cannot help, and tells them so. I think my parents are the ones without hope, but they refuse to go to counseling. They have the worst relationship I've ever seen, and the arguing occurs so often and so aggressively I'm honestly surprised that the police haven't been called by my neighbors. I hate being at home with them because of how awful the relationship is, and I really wish they would end it. This has no relevance to the thread, but I need this off my chest. If you follow the advice about bringing it up to them, don't just blurt it out at the dinner table. A great friend of mine pulled her mom aside and talked to her about divorcing. Her parents were miserable. She gave her mom a safe place and she thought it through. Deciding to go through with the divorce, with the kids' support, has helped make everyone happy. I know a couple whose marriage was breaking down due to a night where they agreed to swing with another couple. Basically, he decided not to go through with it, which surprised me, and she did it. Oops. Anyway, he was angry with her and said he couldn't forgive her. They went to a marriage counselor who instructed him that he was never allowed to mention the night again. I'd always thought that marriage counseling was the opposite. Regardless, they are still together and back on track, so I guess she knew what she was talking about. This is good advice. You cannot agree on something and then change your mind and blame the other person when the agreed upon action takes place. You can change your mind before, but not after the fact. My ex and I broke up at our first session of counseling. After 10 years together and years of her hostility, I heard what was coming out of her mouth and broke up right there. I felt terrible about it, as the poor counselor was expecting a standard chat session and it blew up instantly into a relationship ending. I felt so good driving home. Alright, I gotta do a shout out here. I had a woman help me through my counseling, and I guess I'd have to say I was the one going through the grief counseling. Mine was interesting in the circumstances. You know you've led a crazy life when a seasoned marriage counselor drops jaw at what your spouse has done, but I'll spare the details. I just want to thank you folks who do this for those on the cusp of divorce. I know you've got to go home and feel like heck, wishing you could legally share what wrenched your heart that day. From the other side of the couch, I thank you. At the end of the day, even when the marriage is still ruined, we can look back at you folks and say, damn it, I tried. I didn't just roll over. I did everything I could to save it. 3 years in and I still get comfort, not from being right or some such bull, but from knowing I tried everything I could. Thanks. Also, another important question for marriage counselors. Have you ever fancied one of your clients to the point where you have deliberately given them bad counseling so their relationship would fall apart and they could fall for you? That would be highly unethical. Happened, I'm sure, but horridly unethical. My wife is a marriage counselor. Sometimes her helping a couple is helping them deal with the aspects of divorce. She will readily admit not all people belong together and are better off living separate lives. Also, since she doesn't charge per session, she is more concerned with actually helping both people than if they come back another session, although some clients she would rather not have come back. I used to start off sessions with couples by telling them that the goal of counseling was not to keep them together. The goal was to improve how they communicate with each other, and that would lead them to determine if they should stay together. The problem most couples have is with the lack of communication. Sometimes people can figure out how to improve this important aspect of their relationship. Sometimes they cannot. Yes, I have seen couples who just could not talk to each other and were absolutely miserable. The goal then becomes figuring out how to end the relationship in the most amicable way possible. On a side note, how do you find a good one? I am looking, but right now I might as well throw a dart at the Googles. I want one that won't take sides and will listen impartially. I hear all these horror stories and seems like a bit of a gamble. I am not a marriage counselor, though I have some thoughts about this subject. I'm on the way to counseling this very moment. While it's true that people often seek it when their marriage is on the rocks, I have gone into counseling twice now to help strengthen my relationship, before and after marriage. I can say that my husband has been far more resistant to it, although after finally getting some individual counseling of his own he is far more receptive. It can be a blessing and a boon, simply because no person is ever always right, and the person who seeks the counseling usually has to come to grips with their own issues causing strife in the marriage. Stupid phone message. It's a very valuable tool, as is all psychotherapy if you have the courage to seek it. I have been to multiple relationship counselors with multiple relationships. I am a huge fan of premarital counseling. The first one, I was engaged and my fiance had pushed off the marriage date a couple of times. He agreed to go to premarital counseling with me. Turns out in counseling, he was comfortable to tell me that this relationship was perfect, exactly what he wanted, and he didn't want to mess it up by getting married. Well, the only reason it was so great was because I made it that way because he had promised marriage. Yet, we broke up because he had no intention of marrying me. Next one. The first meeting with the premarital counselor, the guy starts complaining that I did exactly what he asked me to do. I don't remember what it was, but it was something along the lines of going to my son's concert. I invited him. He said he didn't want to go and for me to go without him. So I did, and he got mad at me. He actually told the counselor if she really loved me, she would know what I want. And the counselor asked, so she is supposed to assume that you are a liar. That one didn't last either. Third time, with my forever husband. It was really just verifying that we shared the same interests, values and goals in life. That we were planning on moving in the same direction. That I need to offer my assistance on a regular basis and give him daily affection, and that he needs to discuss decisions with me on a regular basis. We had both been self-supporting singles for a long time and needed the reminder. That's all. IT was wonderful. Add every year or two, we go back to make certain that we are staying on the right course. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.